Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're going to be doing a vampire deck profile. So I'm really excited to see you guys because this deck is actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Pascal. And this deck is a really awesome zombie deck that has some of the coolest zombie boss monsters in the entire game, like the zombie vampire and vampire vamp. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name skipped during a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron. And definitely give Pascal some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Vampire Vamp. This card is a really awesome boss monster that has an absolutely crazy effect that once per turn, when this card or a vampire monster is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can target a face-up monster that your opponent controls whose attack is higher than this card's and equip that card to this card. And this card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of the monsters equipped to this card by its effect. And if this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped with a card by this card's effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, which is a really crazy effect that this card is basically a relinquish that gets absolutely massive. I then play a single copy of Vampire Voivode. Voivode is a really good one-of in the deck as well that has the ability, if this card is normal summon, you can target up to 2 monsters in your opponent's graveyard and special summon those monsters to your own field in defense position, but their effects are negated. And when a monster effect is activated while a monster with the same name is in the graveyard, quick effect, you can negate the activation, which is a crazy powerful effect. And if a monster is special summoned from your opponent's graveyard, then you contribute 2 monsters and special summon this card from your graveyard, which is an crazy powerful effect just to instantly get this card back onto the field. I then play a single copy of Scarlet Scourge. This card is a really good one-of as well. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can pay 1,000 life points and then target a vampire monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but it can't attack this turn. But still being able to get a vampire back onto your side of the field, like a copy of Voivode or Vamp back onto the field by just normal summoning this card out to your field, is really, really big. It also has the ability you can only use that effect once per turn, and at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed a monster by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyard to your field, which is a crazy powerful effect. I then play a single copy of Vampire Grace. Vampire Grace is a really good one-up, but you only need a single copy of Grace. She has the ability that when a level 5 or higher zombie monster is special summoned to your field by a card effect of a zombie monster, while this card's in your graveyard, you can pay 2,000 life points to special summon this card from your grave, which is a great effect just to be able to extend your plays with this really powerful card. I then play a single copy of Vampire Shadow. Vampire Shadow is a really good card because when it's normal summon, you can special summon a dark vampire monster from your hand or deck, which is a great effect because a bunch of our copies of our vampire monsters are high levels, so this card just bypasses that effect and just gets them on the field, which is really, really good. I then play a single copy of Vampire Fraulein. Vampire Fraulein is basically a hand trap, which is really insane. She has the ability that when a monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position, which is a great effect to be able to have. And you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, that once per battle, if your zombie monster battles an opponent's monster, during that damage calculation quick effect, you can pay life points in multiples of 100, maximum 3,000. And your battling monster gains that much attack and defense points during damage calculation only. And at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed any monsters by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyard to your field, which is again a crazy powerful effect. I then play 3 copies of Vampire Ghost. Vampire Ghost is a really good 3-up that has the ability that if this card is normal summon, you can send a vampire monster from your hand or face your field to the graveyard other than this card to add a level 4 or higher vampire monster from your deck to your hand. And if you do, send a level 2 or lower vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard. That's a really powerful effect to be able to search basically any of your high level vampire monsters while also getting one of your low level vampire monsters like your copy of Retainer or Familiar directly into the graveyard to set them up for their plays. It also has the ability that during the main phase, quick effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard and then pay 500 life points to immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a vampire monster to your side of the field, which is a really powerful effect. I then play 3 copies of Vampire Retainer. Vampire Retainer is a really good 3 out in the deck because this card is a really good search card, because if this card is special summon, you can pay 500 life points to add a vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can send a vampire card from your hand or face or field to the graveyard to special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, which it will get that search when it summons itself off its own effect. I then play 3 copies of Vampire Familiar. Vampire Familiar is a really good 3 of the deck as well, because if this card is special summoned, you can pay 500 life points to add a vampire monster from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect to be able to search any of your vampire monsters. And then it searches, and also has the ability, just like your copy of your Vampire Retainer, that if this card's in the graveyard, you can send a vampire card from your hand or face in your field to the graveyard to special summon this card, which is a really good effect. But you do banish it when it leaves the field. So that's it for the vampire monsters. Let's get into the generic zombie support we're playing in this deck. So for the generic zombies we're playing in the deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Unizombie. Unizombie is a really good 3-of and one of the best zombie cards ever printed. This card is just so good. Being able to send a zombie from your hand to the graveyard is really, really good. And this card being a walking foolish burial is just absolutely insane. It's really good to help you level modulate your monsters on your side of the field to get them to the exact level that you need so you can make some really good synchro plays. And this card is also a tuner. I then play a single copy of Gozuki. Gozuki is a really good 1-up that's basically a foolish burial on legs, because during your main phase you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish 1 zombie monster from your graveyard except Gozuki, and special summon a zombie monster from your hand, which is a great effect, especially if you have a high level vampire monster that's stuck in your hand. You can use this card to get it out on the field. I then play 2 copies of Mizuki. Mizuki is a really good 2-of in the deck because it has the ability to banish this card from the graveyard and then target a zombie monster in the grave and special summon that target, which is a great effect to just instantly get one of your high level vampire monsters on your side of the field with this card's effect. I then play a single copy of Doom King Baller Drop because we are playing Zombie World in this particular build, and this card is just a really good boss monster. It has the ability that during the standby phase, if this card, or if there is a face-up field spell card on the field, and this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card in defense position, which is a crazy powerful effect. Just instantly get this card on the field if there's a face-up card in a field spell zone. That is just so powerful. It also has the ability once per chain, when a zombie monster except Doom King Balladrot activates its effect, except during the damage step, quick effect, you can apply one of these 2 effects, but you can't apply the same effect again this turn or in the same chain. You can either negate that effect or banish 1 monster from the field or the grave, which is a really awesome effect because it doesn't target. And then a single copy of Banshee. Banshee is in here because you can search out your copy of Zombie World with this card, which is a really good effect. And then finally, a single copy of Glow Up Bloom, which is a really good 1-of as well, because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish the card from the graveyard to add a level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck to your hand, or if Zombie World is on the field, you can special summon that monster from your deck instead, but it does lock you into zombie monsters for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because that's pretty much all we're summoning anyways. So that's it for the generic zombies. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn. We have a lot of ways to get our zombies into the graveyard, but this is a really good way of getting them back onto the field. I then play a single copy of Foolish Burial because we want to get our zombies into the graveyard so we can bring them back with cards like our copies of Mizuki and bring them back with their own effects, which is really good. I then play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is a really good 1-of just to stop the opponent from hand trapping us, so this card is a definite 1-of of in the deck. I then play a single copy of Vampire's Desire. This card is a really good one of, and it is searchable off our copy of Retainer, which is why I'm just playing a single copy of this card. It has the ability you can target one face-up monster that you control and send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard, and with a different level from that monster. And if you do, the targeted monster becomes the level of the sent monster to the graveyard until the end of the turn. Or it has the ability that you can target a vampire monster in your graveyard and send a monster that you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon that targeted monster, which is a pretty good effect. I then play 2 copies of Vampire's Domain. Domain is a really good 2-of in the deck. It is searchable, which is why I'm just playing 2 copies of this card. It has the ability that once per turn you can pay 500 life points, and then you get an additional normal summon of a vampire monster, which is a really good effect. And each time your vampire monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you gain the same amount of life points, which is a really awesome effect and a really cool vampire effect that this card has. I then play 3 copies of Zombie World. Zombie World is an insanely powerful field spell. It is one of the most powerful field spells ever created, because all monsters on the field in either player's graveyard become zombie monsters, and neither player can tribute summon monsters except zombie monsters, which is a cool effect for this card to have, and just really, really good with this deck. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Poly is a really good 3 on the deck because if you have your copy of Zombie World on the field, it makes it really easy to go into our copy of Nether Soul Dragon by using 2 of our opponent's monsters to go into Nether Soul Dragon. But this card is just a really good 3 on the deck to break your opponent's board. So that's it for these spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing a few traps, and that's going to be 2 copies of Vampire Domination. This card is an insanely powerful counter trap that has the ability that when a spell trap or monster effect is activated, while you control a vampire monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then if it was a monster card, you gain life points equal to its original attack, which is a great effect for this card to have, especially since it's searchable. I then play 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. Rivalry of Warlords has a really interesting interaction with Zombie World, because basically when you have your copy of Zombie World on the field and you have your copy of Rivalry of Warlords, it turns everything into zombies. But each player can only control one type of monster. So if your opponent's not playing zombie monsters and the monsters on their field are become zombies, then you basically lock them down from summoning, which is really insane. Especially if they only have a single monster on the field, they're locked into that one monster, which is a really interesting combo with cards like Vampire Vamp, because then that single monster that they have on the field, you can gobble up with Vamp to be able to go in for game, which is really, really cool. Or at least be able to attack directly with an extremely powerful Vampire Vamp. I really like that combo to be able to get the 3 monsters on the field, because then when you summon a vampire, you can just gobble up the only monster that your opponent controls, which is really neat. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of the Zombie Vampire. This card is very easy to make with your copy of Voivode, and it's just a really awesome card to be able to summon in this deck. I then play a single copy of Vampire Sheridan. This card is also extremely easy to make in this particular deck, and it has a really cool effect that if you use a monster with a level, that monster that is owned by your opponent for this card's XZ summon, you can treat it as a level 6, which is a really cool effect that not only this card shares, but your copy of the Zombie Vampire also shares, because you can treat it as a level 8 if you're going to be able to make your copy of the Zombie Vampire, which is just such a cool effect to be able to have between these 2 cards. This card also has a really good effect that once per turn, you can detach a material from this card and then target one card that your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. And then once per turn, if a monster card is sent from the field to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach a material from this card and special summon one of those monsters to your field in defense position, which is a great effect. We then play a single copy of Beatrice. Beatrice is a really good one-of in the deck. She's super easy to make in this particular deck, and she's basically a walking Foolish Burial. I then play a single copy of Yugioh, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi. The reason I'm playing this card over like Access Code Talker is because we do play Rivalry of Warlords, so this card is actually a zombie that we can make in the deck as a really powerful boss monster. And this card is just really good because you can only control one copy of this card. You negate any activated effects of your opponent's banished monsters, and if a monster is special summoned from the graveyard or a monster effect is activated in the graveyard except during the damage step, then you can target one other face-up monster on the field and change its attack points to 0, and if you do, negate its effects. We then play a single copy of Vampire Fascinator. Fascinator is a really good one-of in the deck, but you only need a single copy of her, and she's just a fantastic one-of Link monster for this particular build. I then play a single copy of Vampire Sucker. Vampire Sucker is a really good one-of as well, and she works really well with your copy of Zombie World, because if you attribute summon, or if you attribute a monster for the tribute summon of your zombie monster, then you can tribute a zombie monster that your opponent controls, even though you do not control them. And you can also use each of the following effects once per turn, or you can only use each of the following effects once per turn of Vampire Sucker, that you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your opponent's field in defense position, but it becomes a zombie. And if a zombie monster is special summoned from either player's graveyard, you draw a card, which is a really good effect. Then play a single copy of Avenged Savior. This card is a really good one-of as well in the deck. One copy of Link Rebo, because we can link away our copy of Glow Bloom to be able to make this card, and then use the effect of Glow Bloom to be able to bring out cards like Baller Draught or even Vampire Vamp. Then play a single copy of Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur is really good as a one-up because it's a walking negate. We play a single copy of Red Eyes Zombie Dragon Lord just in case we have our Rivalry and Zombie World on the field. But this card is really, really good in the deck. We play a single copy of Skeletal Dragon Felgrand. Felgrand is a really good one-up as well, and this card is just really easy to be able to summon to the field. One copy of Immortal Dragon, which is one of the most powerful synchro monsters we have in the entire extra deck, because this card has the ability that during your main phase, you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. And if you do, this card's level becomes the difference in original levels of that monster and this card, which lets you level modulate this card to be able to synchro summon into any synchro monster that you have in the extra deck, which is really, really good. But this card also is that walking Foolish Burial, which is really insane. This card is just really good as a one-of in the extra deck because it's also a tuner. We then play a single copy of Nether Soul Dragon. Nether Soul Dragon is a great super poly target in the deck, especially if you have Zombie World on the field. You can use two of your opponent's monsters to be able to summon out this card, and it generates tokens, which is super cool. We then play a single copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, which is another super poly target, and finally a single copy of Garura, which is also a super poly target. But cool thing about Garura is it's a level 6, which makes it super easy to make either Sheridan or your copy of Beatrice using this card. And when it does touch the graveyard, you get to draw a card, which is really cool. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super cool to be able to play. If you guys have never played Vampire before, you definitely should pick up this deck because it's really fun to be able to play. And it's really insane how easy it is to be able to summon out all of your boss monsters with this particular build and also lock down your opponent. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of Notification Squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.